My sister shattered my son's tooth because his laughter was too boisterous. My mother chuckled. A worthless parasite breeds a worthless child, she said. My father smirked. His tooth, he's fortunate she didn't crack his jaw. I just grinned and unraveled their world. Hey, Reddit, my son, Ethan, was only 7 when it happened. He was the sort of boy who'd laugh so hard at a pun he'd stumble over the punchline. He'd snicker at clouds resembling knights, chortle at ants parading in rows, and dissolve into giggles when our dog spun after its tail. Joy was his voice, and it once was mine too. But that weekend at my parents' house, it shifted everything. I hadn't visited in over 2 years, not since I stopped wiring money after they mistakenly drained my college fund to pay for my sister Leela's cosmetic surgery. They labeled it a mix-up. I called it treachery. Yet when Leela texted about our mom's failing health, I buried my resentment and took Ethan for a weekend stay. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have recalled their cruelty the first warning came when we arrived. Leela greeted us with a sneer, eyeing Ethan's mismatched shoes and tousled hair. "Raising a jester, huh?" she quipped. I brushed it off. Ethan didn't. At dinner, my dad barely glanced up from his meal. "Boy can't sit still," he grumbled. "All chatter, no worth." Ethan had been giggling at a soup tureen shaped like a rocket. After that remark, he fell quiet. Things worsened the next morning. I woke to Ethan's piercing, frantic cries. I raced downstairs, heart pounding. He was crumpled on the kitchen floor, clutching his mouth, blood seeping through his fingers. Leela loomed over him, arms crossed as if she'd just scrubbed a spill. "He wouldn't stop," she said coldly. "I warned him twice, then he shrieked in my ear. I nudged him. That tooth was probably wobbly anyway." I couldn't speak. My knees trembled as I lifted Ethan. His front tooth was split to the root, hanging by a thread. He sobbed, not just from pain, but from confusion and hurt. My mom strolled in, sipping tea casually. "Leela's got a quick temper," she said. "Don't raise a noisy kid if you want calm in someone else's home." Someone else's home, like we were outsiders. When I said I was taking Ethan to the ER, she shrugged. "It's just a milk tooth." My dad, lounging in his armchair, added without looking up, "He's pointless like his mom, always was." I was trembling. I grabbed my bag, scooped up Ethan, and left without a word. We drove to urgent care. His mouth was puffy. The doctor said the tooth was fractured to the root and had to be removed. Ethan kept murmuring, "Was I wrong?" I squeezed his hand. "No, love, you were just being joyful." That night, as Ethan slept against me, gauze in his mouth, I stared into the dark. I thought of the years I'd hoped my family would change, the times I convinced myself I was overreacting. I pictured Leela's sneer, my mother's shrug, my father's jab. Something in me broke, not with rage, but with resolve. They didn't just despise me. They despised that Ethan was like me. So I decided to strip away what they cherished most, control. I'd take it bit by bit with a smile. They'd never see it coming. 2 weeks later, Ethan stopped laughing. Not a single chuckle, not when I tripped over his toy and faked a dramatic fall, not when our dog did her twirl. He just stared, silent, scared. My son, whose joy once lit up rooms, was muted by trauma. That's when I knew this wasn't about settling scores. It was about saving him. I returned to my parents' house alone. Leela opened the door, smug as ever. "Back to grovel," she taunted. I smiled softly. "Just here to talk." She stepped aside, amused. My parents were in the kitchen, Dad watching a video of his old work speech, Mom heating leftovers, humming. "Nice of you to show," Dad muttered, eyes fixed on his screen. I stood in their kitchen where Ethan had been hurt and said, "You crossed a boundary. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to say farewell." Mom raised an eyebrow. "Another of your theatrics? Save it." Leela sipped her drink, smirking. "Cutting us off again? Poor you." "No," I said evenly. "I'm cutting myself free completely." Dad let out a sharp laugh. "You say that every year," I nodded. "True, but this time I have a reason you'll notice." That caught their attention. They thought it was about money. It always was, but it wasn't. I pulled documents from my bag and set them on the table, 3 notarized copies. "What's this?" Mom snapped, scanning one. "Power of attorney revocation," I said quietly. "Bank access gone, emergency contact removed, medical proxy voided. You have no say over me or Ethan ever." "You ungrateful," Dad began, but I cut in. "I've also filed a restraining order. You can't come within 500 feet of my son," Leela scoffed. "You can't," I turned to her. "You broke his tooth. That's assault on a minor." "That's absurd," she sneered. "The absurdity," I said, "is that I haven't pressed charges." Then I placed a final envelope on the table addressed to their church. "This is a detailed report, photos of Ethan's injury, your texts, audio of you calling him a visitor, not family, and Leela, you saying he needed to learn for being a pest." Mom paled. You wouldn't. I did. They won't believe you, Dad growled. We raised you. I sat down calm. Exactly, that's why they will. Mom's hands shook. Leela's eyes flickered. Then came the final strike. I'd also contacted their country club's board, the one that recently honored them for model parenting. They'd get the same report by courier. You vicious, Leela hissed. I didn't waver. You didn't just shame my son, you made him think his happiness was a fault. You broke his tooth. Worse, you broke his spirit. So I'm breaking your facade, your perfect family charade, your empty pride. I stood. Oh, and your church lobby portraits, already being taken down. Child cruelty doesn't pair well with sacred art. You'll pay for this, Dad yelled as I walked out. I smiled at the door. No, I'll heal from this. The consequences began 3 days later. Their church issued a statement denouncing their actions and revoked their honorary titles. Old friends, book club members, business colleagues started cutting ties online. Invitations vanished. Then the real blow, Dad's esteemed mentoring council stripped his community leader role. No one wanted a child-harming retiree shaping young minds. Leela lost her job 3 weeks later. Word of a potential lawsuit, sparked by a family friend who saw Ethan's photos, reached her company. Firms don't back bullies who hurt kids. Me, I didn't boast. I didn't share it online. I didn't tell Ethan. I enrolled him in an art class with a kind, lively teacher. Ethan was timid at first. By week 3, he smiled. By week 4, he laughed at his clay dragon. By week 5, he told a joke so loud the class joined in. That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "I'm not bad, am I?" I kissed his forehead. "Your joy, sweetheart, that's who you are." But inside, I wasn't finished. They'd stolen so much from him. Now I'd take something they never gave me. Dignity, peace, control. When my mother called after their world began to crumble, she didn't ask about Ethan or me. She asked if I had to go so far. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice quavered, not from remorse, but from the shame of losing her reputation, the only thing she valued. Leela tried next, pleading, "Talk to me. You've gone too far. I lost my job, my car." I didn't reply. They sought forgiveness when they'd shown none to a 7-year-old who laughed too loudly. People like my family only notice absence when it stings. So I gave them what they couldn't bear. Silence months passed. Ethan smiled more, slept soundly, one most creative in his art class, and for the first time since that day, giggled in public. My parents, meanwhile, unraveled, quietly, publicly, just enough to feel the loss of influence, of status, of their illusion. But that wasn't the revenge. Not yet. The true revenge began one misty November morning when I submitted the final documents to make it permanent. Years ago, my parents named me executor of their legacy collection. Boxes of photos, videos, clippings, awards, meant for a local museum's notable families exhibit. They'd spent years perfecting it, labeled tapes, organized albums. Mom called it their heritage vault, proof of their ideal American family. They'd asked me to digitize it. I agreed, but not as they imagined. I digitized it all, then erased every trace of them. Their photos, cropped. Their videos, edited out. Their articles, rewritten as simple captions. What remained was a collection called The Boy Who Shined, centered on Ethan, his joy, his moments, his laughter, all through my perspective, my words, my truth. I donated it to their museum under my name as curator, not for vengeance, but for correction. The exhibit opened quietly, no press, just a library listing and public link. I sent them a postcard with the exhibit title, The Boy Who Shined, a tribute to joy despite cruelty. Leela posted a vague rant online days later. Mom stopped attending church events. Dad reportedly snapped at a librarian who mentioned the exhibit at a community talk. And me. I took Ethan to see it. He didn't know the full story. He just saw images of himself painting, building sandcastles, napping in my arms as a baby. He pointed at one and whispered, "That's when I made the dragon." I smiled. He saw his life, not their shame, not their labels, just his joy. That's when I knew the revenge was done. I didn't ruin their names or drive them from their home. I did worse. I erased them from the legacy they prized. They wanted to be remembered. Instead, they faded into silence while the boy they called worthless thrived.